queer theorists don't just contest the idea of gender as a social, they actually will go farther and say that sex too, biological sex, is also in some sense a social construct. So this is incredible.
Now, we've been using a couple of words I think need some additional definition, is sex and gender. Sometimes those words are kind of used interchangeably. How people in the queer theory stream parse out the definitions of those terms.
Sure. So queer theory would definitely distinguish between sex, which is a biological category, and gender, which they see as a social construct, as purely a social construct. Let me just read to you from Wilkins' book, page 40 and 41. I'll just refer to, again, I think he's a biological male, but I don't know. So I'm just going to say Wilkins. Gender, this is a quote, "Gender is a language, a system of meanings and symbols, along with the rules, privileges, and punishments pertaining to their use. For power and sexuality, masculinity and femininity, strength and vulnerability, action and passivity, dominance and weakness." The point is, gender is a language. Gender is a system of symbols and meanings. It's something that we have built. Here's another quote from Judith Lorber's essay, Night to His Day. She writes, "Western society's values legitimate gendering." It's something you do, it's an action, "by claiming that it all comes from physiology, female and male procreative differences. But gender and sex are not equivalent, and gender as a social construction does not flow automatically from genitalia and reproductive organs, the main physiological differences of females and males." And then again, Anderson and Collins and Race, Class, and Gender, right? Gender, listen to this is a great, listen to it. "Gender, like race, is a socially constructed experience, not a biological imperative. Sex refers to one's biological identity as male or female. Gender refers to the systematic structuring of relationships between women and men in social institutions. Gender is a learned identity, but as with race, it cannot be understood at the individual level alone." So gender is sort of like these categories we've created, and by which we structure society into, the men on the top and the women who are a marginalized group. And so gender refers to that system that we've created, not to biological facts. That's their view. They're just distinct. There's sex and there's gender.
So the sex is the biology. It is how, we are created. As the Bible would say, male and female. But queer theory comes along and kind of separates out the biology or the sex from the gender. And they would say that the gender is how you express yourself or how you appear or how you live. And that is the social construct. That being a woman or being a man is kind of subject to almost whatever you want that to be. And so maybe we should talk about like some practical examples of how this is showing up in the culture and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, more analogy here. It's kind of helpful. And the one thing that's important is they don't just say that sex and gender are different. They say that they're trying to queer theory is all about troubling these categories and showing them, dismantling them, and showing they're arbitrary. So here's a good analogy. Imagine that we as a culture, we defined a jock to be anyone who's taller than 6 feet, and a nerd refers to anyone who is shorter than 6 feet tall. Now, there is a biological reality there. People are either over 6 feet tall or under 6 feet tall. That's biology. That's just you can measure it. It's objective. But then the category of jock or nerd that we've created are arbitrary, putting people in buckets. Like, well, you're over 6 feet tall, you're a jock. You're under 6 feet tall, you're a nerd. Well, that's arbitrary. Why 6 feet? Why not 5'11"? Why not 6'1"? And why not? What about weight? What if you really are tall but very skinny? Are you still a jock? So what queer theory does is trying to expose the ways in which these categories of male and female don't even really, not only are they socially constructed, but they're arbitrary. They're blurry areas and gray areas and blurry lines. So they make you question then by pointing that out. And this is why you have things like drag queens and also people pointing at intersex individuals who have both male and female characteristics due to a variety of genetic conditions. They're pointing those out in order to trouble you, to make you think, oh, it's not as black and white as I thought, and to point out these are really arbitrary constructs. So that explains why they're going a bit. That's why people are trying to, even you'll see discussion now, I should add this, queer theorists don't just contest the idea of gender as a social, they actually will go farther and say that sex too, biological sex is also in some sense a social construct. So this is incredible. So Judith Butler, again, I'd say almost a founder of queer theory. She says, well, does it seem like that sex, biological sex is, in her words, on the far side of language? Like, in other words, you either have XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes. It's not about how you describe it with language. It's not about words. It's about a reality that's out there beyond the effects of culture. But so then Wilkins asks, but what if sex is already a gendered way of looking at bodies? What if sex is already gender? So that distinction between the two is not a distinction at all. What is sex, the original given, transcendent and universal? What if that could be deconstructed? So here's like, how could you deconstruct chromosomes? Well, here's the point. If I close my eye, I'm a guy. Maybe this is different, but if I close my eyes, you probably couldn't even tell me what color my eyes were. Like you don't look at me and be like, oh yeah, he has blue eyes, he has green eyes, he has brown eyes, and they're brown, right? But I don't know. I don't look around looking and know, oh, that person is a blue eye. That person is a brown eye. Or what about earlobes? Like, are your earlobes detached or are they attached? Earlobes differ a little bit. No one cares. It's just a little flap of skin. You're like, I don't look around. I don't categorize people by earlobe type. Well, their point is we have this fixation with certain flaps of skin. We call them penises. We call them vaginas. But what makes those things so relevant? Why do we immediately look at someone? Oh, they have a penis. Like, well, we don't look at someone and say they have blue eyes. They have a detached earlobe. So their point is, yes, sure, there are these things out there on our bodies, but why do we group whole sets of bodies according to this one? Why not use their big toe? Why not use their ear? Why not use their eye color? Well, because gender is basically gender and sex are interrelated. They're both in some sense constructs. Why we care about some parts and not others is because there's this cultural fixation that's produced by, again, these social hierarchies. Anyway, so the point is that they're not even saying, not limiting our deconstruction to just gender. They're even going in and saying, let's deconstruct sex too.